This happened about 7 years ago, back when I still thought that getting away from everything was the same thing as getting better. I was 24. I had just dropped out of my second semester of grad school, environmental science, if that matters, and my girlfriend of 3 years had left about 6 weeks before that. Not dramatically, just quietly, which was somehow worse. I wasn't in a good place. I'm not going to dress it up. I was sleeping until noon, eating garbage, spending too much time alone in a one-bedroom apartment that still smelled like her shampoo. My older brother Marcus was the one who found the listing. He texted it to me on a Tuesday night with no message, just a link. A farm in Central Oregon, outside a small town called Fossil, needed a seasonal hand for late autumn harvest prep. Room and board included, small weekly pay. No experience necessary, just willingness to work. I said yes the same night. I didn't even read the full listing. I want to be clear about something before I go further. What happened out there? I've gone back and forth on how to talk about it. I told one person, maybe two. Most people who know me don't know this story. I'm telling it now because I think enough time has passed that I can do it without it taking something from me. Though honestly, even saying that out loud, I'm not sure it's true. Fossil, Oregon sits in the middle of Wheeler County, which is one of the least populated counties in the continental United States. That's not a guess. I looked it up later. The landscape out there isn't what most people picture when they think Oregon. No dense green forests, no dramatic coastline. It's high desert, rolling scrub hills, rimrock formations, dry creek beds. The sky is enormous. You notice that immediately, how much of your field of vision is just sky. I drove out on a Thursday in late October. The owner of the property, a man named Dale Pruitt, had given me directions over phone because the address didn't pull up reliably on GPS. He was soft-spoken. Matter of fact, he told me the driveway was unmarked, to look for a rusted green gate about 4 miles past the county road junction. He said there'd be a white truck parked near the barn. He said his wife, Carol, would have dinner ready around 6. The drive from Portland took about 4 hours. I went through the Dallas, then south along the John Day River Basin. The landscape changed gradually, then all at once. By the time I turned off the highway, there were no other cars. I went maybe 20 minutes on a county road, then another 4 miles on gravel. The green gate was exactly where he said it would be. I pulled through it. The farmhouse was modest, wood-sided, one-story, a covered porch with a split-log bench. Behind it, a large metal barn, the kind with a curved roof, like an airplane hangar but smaller. To the east, a cluster of outbuildings, a tool shed, what looked like an old smokehouse, and a long, low structure I assumed was storage. Beyond all of it, open scrubland stretched out toward a ridgeline, maybe 2 miles away. Dale was in his late 60s, lean, with the kind of weathered face you get from decades outside. Carol was warm and practical, and fed me pot roast, and didn't ask too many questions. I liked them immediately. The room they gave me was off the back of the house. Small, clean, smelled like cedar. A single window faced east toward the scrubland and the ridge. I went to sleep that first night feeling something I hadn't felt in months. Not happy exactly, but quieter, like the noise in my head had finally found something bigger than itself to sit inside. I should have paid more attention to that ridge. The work was physical and simple, and I was grateful for both. Dale needed the remaining root vegetable beds cleared, some fencing repaired on the north pasture, and the barn organized before winter set in. We worked from first light until about 4 in the afternoon. Then the days were basically mine. I'd walk, read, sleep early. By the 4th day, I had a loose routine. After dinner, I'd sometimes walk south along the property line, just to move. The light out there at dusk was incredible, orange and deep purple. The shadows long and geometric across the scrub. I wore layers because the temperature dropped fast once the sun went. It was on one of those evening walks that I first noticed the structure. I'd gone further south than usual, maybe a third of a mile past the last fence post. There was a slight depression in the land, a shallow draw, and at the bottom of it, mostly hidden by the terrain, was a building I hadn't seen from a house. Low profile, maybe 20 feet by 40. Metal siding. Same corrugated style as the barn, but older, darker. The roof had partially collapsed on one end. I didn't think much of it. Old farms accumulate structures. Things get built and abandoned. I noted it and turned back. That night at dinner, I mentioned it to Dale. Just casually. Said I'd walked south and spotted an old building in the draw. He nodded without looking up from his plate. Old grain storage, he said. Been out of use since before we bought the place. Carol said something about the roof needing to come down eventually. It was a liability. That was the end of it. I went to bed fine. Slept fine. It was around 3 a.m. that I woke up. Not to sound exactly. More like to the absence of one. The kind of silence that has weight to it. I lay there for a moment, oriented myself. Cedar smell, east-facing window, right? And then I heard it. Faint, metallic, like something being dragged slowly across a hard surface. Not loud, just consistent. 3 or 4 seconds, then nothing. I told myself it was the barn. Temperature differentials, the metal contracting in the cold. I'd heard similar sounds from the barn at night before, small groans, ticks. This was plausible. I lay back down, but it didn't quite fit. The barn was to the west. This sound had come from the east. I didn't get up. I told myself I was disoriented from sleep. I eventually drifted off again, and by morning it felt like nothing. 2 nights later, it happened again. Except this time it was different. I was awake, actually reading around 11, and I heard footsteps. Not in the house. Outside, on the gravel path that ran along the east side of the building, right below my window. Slow, deliberate. The crunch of gravel underfoot is a very specific sound. You can't really mistake it for wind or animals. This was footsteps, for maybe 5 of them. Then they stopped. I sat up very still, put my book down. I waited. Nothing. I got up slowly and looked out the window. The yard was empty. The security light on the barn corner lit up the area in that amber sodium vapor way, and I could see the gravel path clearly. Nothing there. No movement. The scrubland beyond the yard was just darkness. I told myself it was Dale. Getting up for something. Stepping outside. Older people did that. I almost knocked on their bedroom door to ask, and then decided that was insane, that I was going to wake up a 68-year-old man in the middle of the night to ask if he'd stepped outside. I went back to bed. But here's the thing I kept coming back to. Dale and Carol's bedroom was on the west side of the house. The path below my window was on the east side. There was no reason for either of them to be walking on that path. I didn't say anything the next day. I ate breakfast. I worked. I tried not to think about it. On the 6th day, I went back to the old grain storage in the draw. I don't fully know why. Curiosity, I think. Or something that I was calling curiosity because it was easier than naming it correctly. The structure was exactly where I'd seen it. I walked around the perimeter. The metal siding was old. You could see the rust patterns that come from 50 years of rain and sun. The door on the east side was a sliding type, on a rail, and it was slightly open, not dramatically, maybe 8 inches. I stood there for a while. I looked inside. The interior was dark and smelled of rust and old hay and something else I couldn't name. Earthier, the collapsed section of roof on the west end let in a triangular wedge of afternoon light. From what I could see, the space was empty. Some debris, a rusted piece of equipment near the back. I couldn't make out exactly what it was. I did not go inside. What made me leave was something I noticed on the ground near the sliding door. The dirt in front of it had been disturbed. Not footprints exactly, more like something had been dragged. A rough linear depression in the dirt, maybe 6 inches wide, leading from the doorway and then curving around the south end of the building where I lost it in the scrub grass. Recent. The dirt around it was still dark. It had rained 2 days ago. I walked back to the house. I didn't say anything at dinner. I tried to think of explanations. An animal, maybe deer, moved through this kind of terrain. Coyotes. But I couldn't make the math work. Whatever made that mark was heavy. And it started from inside the building. That night the wind picked up. A cold front moving through. Dale had mentioned at lunch. Said we might get some rain by morning. I lay in bed, listening to it move across the scrubland, that low moan you get when wind rolls over open country. It found gaps around the window frame and made a thin whistling sound. Periodically the barn would creak. The security light out front swayed slightly on its post and made the shadows in the yard shift and contract. I was almost asleep when I heard the door. Not the front door, not the back door. The door to my room. The handle turned. Slowly. The kind of slow that is deliberate. The door moved inward maybe 2 inches and then stopped. I was completely still. I was not breathing. Every part of me had gone to zero. The door sat there, 2 inches open, for what felt like a long time, maybe 10 seconds. Then it pulled back to closed. I heard footsteps, moving down the hallway toward the back of the house. I did not move for a very long time. I lay there in the dark, and I made myself go through every explanation. Dale, Carol, one of them had come to check on something. A leak, a noise, and stopped at my door, thought better waking me. That was the most logical answer. That was the one I kept returning to. I did not sleep. In the morning at breakfast, I was trying to figure out how to ask, how to phrase it. I was in the middle of forming the sentence when Carol said, almost offhandedly, that she'd heard someone walking around the house last night and assumed it was me. Said she hoped the wind hadn't kept me up. I asked her what time. She thought about it. Said around 1:30. Neither of them had gotten up. I should have left that day. I know that. Looking back, I can identify the moment clearly. That was the moment. I didn't leave. I don't have a satisfying explanation for why. Part of it was that I didn't want to look irrational. Part of it was that leaving felt like failing at the one thing I'd managed to commit to. And part of it was something harder to name. A kind of paralysis that sets in when your brain is working very hard to make something not be true. I worked that day in the barn. I kept the big sliding door open to the yard. I kept checking it. By late afternoon, the clouds had moved in. The temperature dropped fast. I finished up around 4 and came inside and didn't go for a walk. That night, I pushed the cedar dresser in front of my door. I sat on the bed with a lamp on, and I listened to the farm settle into dark. Wind, the barn creaking, an occasional low sound from somewhere east that I'd stopped trying to identify. I think I slept around midnight. I woke up to the smell of smoke. Not with smoke. Not the comfortable smell of a fireplace. This was sharper. Chemical almost. The smell that comes when something that isn't supposed to burn is burning. I sat up. The room was dark. My lamp had timed out. I could see, at the base of my door, below the dresser, an orange flicker, not inside the room. In the hallway, I moved. I didn't think. The dresser scraped back hard, and I yanked the door open, and the hallway was lit, not fully on fire, but one end of it, near the back utility room, had something burning, a pile of material. Old rags, cloth, something. The flames were low, but spreading to the baseboard. I yelled for Dale. I yelled for Carol. I heard movement from their side of the house. I grabbed the fire extinguisher from the kitchen. I'd noticed it the first day, one of those habits, and I got to the utility room and discharged it. The fire was small enough that it went out. The smoke was thick, but moving toward the back door, which had been left open. Open. The back door was open. I had not opened it. Dale was in the hallway behind me. He was looking at the scorched baseboard and the foam from the extinguisher, and he was very quiet. Carol was behind him. She asked if everyone was all right. We were all right. We didn't sleep after that. We sat in the kitchen with the lights on, and Dale called the county sheriff's non-emergency line and reported it. By the time anyone came out, a deputy mid-morning, there wasn't much to find. The deputy looked at the utility room, looked at the back door, looked at the scrubland to the east, and wrote things down. He asked if we had any reason to suspect anyone specifically. Dale said no. I loaded my car that afternoon. Carol packed me food I didn't ask for. Dale shook my hand and held it a moment longer than a normal handshake. He said he was sorry. I told him it wasn't his fault. He looked like he wanted to say something else, but he didn't. I drove north on the county road. The scrubland moved past on both sides. I had the heater on and the radio up, and I kept checking my mirrors. I didn't stop until I hit the Dallas. I got a room at a chain motel, and I sat on the bed and I stared at the wall for a while. I tried to build a complete explanation. Someone from town with a grudge against Dale. A transient who'd been sheltering in that old structure and felt encroached upon. Kids. Some kind of territorial dispute I hadn't been told about. None of it fully fit. The footsteps in the hall, the door handle, the drag marks in the mud, the way the fire had started, not randomly, but in a contained pile right at the base of the hallway that led to where people were sleeping. I called Marcus that night and told him the job hadn't worked out. He didn't push for details. I didn't offer any. I still think about that ridge sometimes. The way it sat on the eastern horizon, a dark line at the edge of everything. And I think about that structure in the draw, the one with the sliding door, the one that had been out of use since before Dale and Carol bought the place. I never found out who the deputy talked to. I never called Dale back, and he never called me. After a few months, I told myself there was probably a sensible explanation, a mundane one, the kind that doesn't hold up when you're alone in the dark, but works fine in daylight. Most days I believe it. What I can't account for, and I've really tried, is the moment I stood at that door in the draw, 8 inches open, that dark interior, the smell of rust and something earthier beneath it. I hadn't heard anything from inside, but I had the absolute, physical, unshakable conviction that something in there had heard me. I still don't know what was in that building, and I've made a kind of peace with not knowing. But every now and then, in a quiet house, when a door settles in its frame, I feel it again, that thing where everything in you goes to zero.